We'll go ahead and turn it over to Sam.
So, welcome everybody. My name is Sam Gomez. I'm the founder, executive director of the Sagrado Galeria, where you're at. We've been here since 2016, doing all kinds of work in arts, culture, and design, a lot of advocacy work. We work closely with our partnerships and community to put the language into the RFQ for the light rail stops and get artists selected, which was a big win. And as we're moving forward with everything that's happening now, with all the development, all the excitement, all the double-edged swords, and all the struggles that we must go through for change. I just want to welcome everybody here. This is I would say, like right now, you know, that we tend to forget about past, present, and future, and being present. And sometimes we don't realize that we're living the history, we're making the history. So I just want to really emphasize that right now, at this moment, this is a major milestone with everybody here and all the movers and shakers from the city, from the nonprofits to the residents. I mean, this is really important on what we're trying to do here in South Central, or what I would say South Sacred. But one of the things that we worked on as far as like Sagrado and working with our partners is like all the different milestones, but all the different points of pride that are in South Central. As you know, downtown, and then you got the Real Salado, then you got the Air Store Station, and you got South Plaza, and then you got South Mountain. So like we are very much in a sacred ground. And also, it's a vibrant community, and it has a lot of history, a lot of energy. So we want to make sure that we honor our past, present, and future. Here on the walls are some photos. I've been documenting South Central before the light rail, so I'm looking hopefully to share those photos in a show, which will be entitled South Phoenix Love. And we really want to just kind of make sure that we preserve, but we understand who we're serving. And some of these people here, you see in these images, from the guy, the elder on his bike on his way to work or coming back from work, from South Plaza, and the cultural, one of the cultural chakras that are here on South Central. You're here now at another cultural chakra. The Air Store Station will soon be another cultural chakra. South Mountain is a cultural chakra. The Real Salado is a cultural chakra. Downtown is a cultural chakra. So it's kind of like a mindset and how we look at things when we think about development and how it needs to be more consciously driven and approach. So once again, I want to thank everybody here. Once again, the bathrooms are over there. We got some food over there, and there's going to be some walkthrough presentations out here in the parking lot. So once again, thank you for being here, and we hope that we are meeting again once we get some of these things executed and done. We have a lot of movers and shakers and a lot of people in bright minds here that want to do the same thing. And as we know, sometimes we are up against certain policies that are in place, or certain tools and resources that we don't have access to. So we're hoping that we can work together so we can all get to our goals. So I want to introduce to you my brother, Victor Vitelis. He's going to come and talk to you a little bit about what we do.
Well, thank you, everyone. Just want to welcome everyone, including some of our elected officials. They had a policy meeting that was not, weren't able to make it, but we're still trying to get them here. We have their staff. They're going to come and say a few words. I want to thank all of our community partners, our neighbors, our small business owners, our residents, all of those in the city of Phoenix and institutions that are here today. We also want to thank the South Central Collaborative, our sister Shannon Secretary over there. I met her 7 years ago, and I can tell you we would not be at the place we're at today if it wasn't for our sister Shannon. Let's give her a round of applause. I also want to thank SoFo Convening. We see quite a few of our members here. Our SoFo Convening started about 7 years ago as well, and have really made a strong effort every day, every month to really make changes here in our community. So I appreciate all those from the SoFo Convening. If you can just stand up, I want to just recognize them. We want to thank the Sagrado for hosting us, Multi-Studio and their team. They did a really great job in preparing everything for today, and over the last few years they've been working with us on this. We want to thank the Kiewit Foundation. They were one of our initial funders in the development mentorship program, so we're really excited and thankful. I don't know if that's here yet, but we want to thank them as well. So why are we here? You know, this is it's a vocation. You know, it's something that I believe God has called me to do. Has helped me to really understand some of the things that are needed in our neighborhood and our communities. I was born and raised here, so I could have lived anywhere in the valley. My children, I have 5 of them. My wife and I decided to raise our kids here where I was born and raised. And we've been through a lot. We've seen a lot. Mostly good, sometimes bad. But we've come a long ways. And, you know, everything is centered around my vocation. As a husband, as a dad, and being a servant to God. So really, this is something that I've been praying for a really long time. St. Catherine of Siena is a patron saint of ours. And I'm going to go into some more details on the actual projects, but St. Catherine has been a huge advocate for me, an intercessor, so I really appreciate her, and decided to name this project, when I bought this, this development, these 3 buildings and 2 empty lots behind you, I did a lot of praying, because I probably didn't have the money to buy them, but my wife supported me and allowed me to buy them. And now today we own 2 of these 4 parcels free and clear. Sometimes you have to take risks like that. Sometimes you have to make those efforts, even though you can't get financing, and you just got to make it work, and it's something that we did. So I just wanted to share a little bit. I won't go too much into my story. A lot of you guys know my story, but I'm going to go a little bit into why we're here after I get Aaron Kane and Andrea Luna Cervantes up here just to say a few words from District 7 and District 8. I know Aaron's here. Is it Anna?
It's Andrea.
Andrea, I'm sorry. Andrea. Come on.
Hello, everyone. My name is Aaron Kane. I'm with Council District 7, Councilwoman Yasmin Ansari's office, policy director. She's at a policy meeting right now voting on a very important resolution, so she wishes she could be here, and she planned to if it was a special session that was called. But I just want you all to know that you really have Councilwoman Ansari's and our office's full support in making sure that South Central is inevitably going to grow and change, but that it grows and changes in a way that is led by the community here, in a way that really reflects the history and the culture, and what the community actually wants to see. And I think meetings like this are so incredibly powerful and helpful for both the community as well as us to vote on these items and make sure that the development that comes here is something that we want to see. So I think catalyst projects like this will really help set the tone for how it grows. So really excited to participate today. I also want to give some other opportunities to advocate for your neighborhood as well. Right now we're going through the general obligation fund process, and there's still quite a few opportunities to weigh in. We have some really great advocates for South Phoenix on the subcommittees. We have Chance Sakari on environment and sustainability. We have Sam Gomez on arts and culture, Victor Dallas and Eva Olivares on housing and human services. We have all been advocating for a lot of funding for South Phoenix and really helpful projects here. So the next executive session, or next executive committee session is October 17th, 9 to 11 a.m. For you to phoenix.gov/bond and sign up to speak to support a lot of these projects for South Phoenix. And one more thing, Councilman Ansari will be hosting mobile office hours 4 to 6 p.m. at the South Mountain Community Center. Feel free to come in if you need help with any resources, whether it be rental assistance or illegal dumping in your neighborhood, pretty much anything, or if you just want a chance to sit one-on-one with the councilwoman and really share your vision for your neighborhood and what you think of the needs that are here. So thank you everyone for having us here today.
Thank you. My name is Andrea Luna Cervantes. I'm with the District 8 office of Carlos Garcia, and we share the same sentiment as Aaron said. Councilmember Garcia is a huge advocate of South Phoenix, and I know this convo has been ongoing. He unfortunately wasn't able to be here due to policy as well. I'm not sure what to say here. I didn't know I was supposed to speak, but anything and everything, you can all call our office and Councilmember Garcia can
Siena, St. Catherine's Square, is what we're calling it. And the development is intended to catalyze and really implement the South Central TOD plan. We worked for multiple years with the team up here, the long-range planning team, Joel Carrasco and Liz Valencia, and everyone in the community to really develop a plan that reflected the neighborhood, that reflected the community. And early on, before the plan was approved, there was developments already taking place. And we learned so much from the research that had been completed by the Center of Neighborhood Technology, Krista and her team, as well as Petra Falcone and Promise Arizona, were the primes for that plan, and really informed us in the community some of the challenges that our neighbors had. So when we had some developments popping out of the ground, we really wanted to try to help them serve the people that are in this community, which are 0 to 30%, 0 to 30 to 60% of AMI. 2/3 of them are in those buckets of average median income. We weren't very successful challenging some of the developments to get them to understand the need to provide these type of housing for the lower income people in our community. So after the SOFO convening, they got their project approved. We decided, you know what, we're gonna do it ourselves. What can we do ourselves? What can we focus on? I said, well, I own this land. We can put it up. We had some partners with Gould Evans at the time, now Multi-Studio. We had some young men like Jordan Jacks, Javier Espinoza, that said, hey, I want to develop. I want to learn how to become a developer. So we decided to work with Shannon and really create the South Central Collaborative Development Mentorship Program to help us work together with developers like Lorenzo Perez and others in the neighborhoods and others in the community that want to see these type of projects become a reality and really help give us the experience and knowledge base that we were lacking. So instead of us just, trying to fight every single project that comes to the door, we're saying, we can do it ourselves. We can model it ourselves. Help show the community that can actually be done. We know it's not going to be easy, but it can be done. And when everyone talks about place-based strategies, it's really important that, this came from our community, it came from our neighbors, it came from those in this South Central corridor. So we're going to talk about the project more and get into detail about that, but it really is intended to implement the TOD plan, the Transportation Oriented Development Plan. There are limitations to current zoning for implementing the plan that apply to this site and other potential developments. Discussion with city staff and official implementation strategies. Site walk, we're going to do a site walk afterwards so the community members can visualize the details discussed in the presentation. To achieve the vision of the TOD community plan and make the project work on small lots for developers intended to deliver, we have some asks. So there's certain things that we're going to have to ask of you. And as you can see up here, have an open mind. We ask you to collaborate, be flexible, be strategic in your thinking. This is not something that is being done right now anywhere else in the city, and we're trying to make it work. We believe that there's opportunities that maybe a large developer can't do to make it work, or a mission-based developer that it doesn't pencil for them because they have a certain machine or a certain profit that they have to make. We're willing as a community, as a member, owners of the land here, to say, hey, we're willing to forego some of our profit in order to address some of the needs of our neighborhood and our community. So this is really what it's all about. We want to inspire mission-driven and market developers to see the value of the approach. We're trying to create fourplexes that people will own one of the units and they'll be able to rent 3 of them. So those 5 buildings that you see out there will be owned by someone. They will own that property. We want to put 4 families in 0 to 30% of AMI, 4 families from 31 to 60% of AMI, 4 families from 61 to 90% of AMI, and the rest be market rate renters outside of the actual owners of the property. Let's see, where am I at? The City of Phoenix, we want to encourage how to implement models like this in development, in scale, and form, in recognition of multiple returns. We're asking the greater support of the City of Phoenix Adaptive Reuse Program to advocate that the city to walk through and expand these type of programs. We're asking for the cross-city collaborative team approach that will be creative and leading to help to make this possible. Implement a cross collaboration of departments in order to make this type of project viable. We want to focus on pilot zones to implement increment variabilities in support of the anomalies. Recognizes the South Central is varied and wants to remain varied. Streamline processes for the email our small developments. Accept the variabilities, overlays, text amendments to reduce amendments, technical appeals, and then we want to have your local support in the departments, reducing the paperwork stream, technical appeals, and time to complete. I know that's a lot. I mean, we're asking for a lot, but it takes a lot to break the cycles that are happening in our community. I consider myself a cycle breaker. I grew up in a duplex. I know what it's like to have a neighbor where I can turn to not only get milk or bread or sugar, but as a kid, I grew up plugging in our little pot to make hot water so that my mom with RH, my 6 sisters and my 1 brother, 8 of us total, could take a warm bath when we didn't have electricity in the winter. You know, those type of connections to other people in our community helped me to get through some of those harsh winters that we have here in Phoenix, right? You don't think they're harsh, but when you don't have any electricity, they're harsh. When you don't have any food, they're harsh. So these are the type of inspirations that have led me to try to help not only myself as a developer, an aspiring developer, and the mentees for development, but the people that will own these assets, that will own these homes and become, you know, wealthy. We all know what real estate can do to create wealth for generations, and I've experienced it. So we want to be able to offer that to our neighbors. I'm just going to end with this, and then I'll turn it over. You know, we're in a different market now than we were just a year ago, but I had 3 or 4 buyers from St. Catharines Parish qualify for $300,000 to $400,000, and they could not buy a home. $300,000 to $400,000, they could not buy a home in their own community. They were all excited because they finally got approved for their loan, their mortgage, but there was no inventory to sell them. We're hopeful that with the way the market is shifting, that this will be a project, and the project will be shovel ready in 2 years from now, once the construction is completed and hopefully the market has settled itself down, so we can find the homeowners from our neighborhoods in our communities to own these assets. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Elias. Thank you.
Thank you, Victor. So the South Central TOD Community Plan, as short as it was in the span of time here with the community, we started those planning efforts in 2016. The city was given a grant to help create a community plan. In 2018, the steering committee was formed to help formulate this plan, guiding direct with community input. And in 2022, this year, the city council adopted that plan. So 4 years. That's not anything in comparison to the decades that South Central has been waiting for types of investments and opportunities for the members of their community. So the depth of just straight out love from the community to identify their points of pride, the things that they are willing to support, despite a lot of trust issues. There were a lot of trust issues in the process, but as was seen by the start of this meeting, we didn't do this a lot more. We couldn't even get the meeting started. There was that much energy and excitement focused around it. But the community has identified where they want to be within 30 years from now, and even longer than that. So things are going to take time to get there. So you can't get there overnight, and that's not the intent. We have to do it incrementally. But at the same time, you can't just stall out and not do anything, saying we need to wait longer, we need to wait longer. There has to be a momentum generated. And so thank goodness for the South Central Collaborative, the SOFO convening, and several of our neighborhood partners. they've been helping to ring the bell for implementation, and my life has never been the same because of it, and in a good way. I went from approving fences and stamping plans over the counter for things like build garage addition or something, to actually helping transform an entire community and being a part of that because of those dedicated resources that are being allocated. So that's just a little behind the plan. But the big question is, how do we get to this vision? How do we maintain trust? How do we make sure that what the community asks for is going to be done? Unlike some other efforts, well, we have local developers, residents, and owners that are being involved. They are putting their assets into the game, and we are doing what we can to foster a supportive and collaborative environment to help achieve those visions. But I can't stand up here with full confidence and say that I can make that vision happen, or our departments currently can make that vision happen. We need to be able to identify some of these factors that are putting obstacles in the way from smaller scale development and the missing middle. But the missing middle is, you can either have the big mega block development that gives the maximum return on investment portfolios, or you can have single family houses, which is many people have gotten accustomed to because of the way that the city developed. Or there's some in between that can work to help promote healthy neighborhoods. So that's what we're here for local empowerment, but mainly for support. So yes, I think that's where I was at. Krista?
Good afternoon, I'm Aaron. I'm dirty because I've been outside messing around, and you guys look really nice, so I feel a little uncomfortable here. It's also being naked from you, so it's great to see everybody. We have a big team here, and like Elias is saying, it's like we have been extraordinarily happy to be involved in such a passionate kind of mission-driven project. And so Jim's here, we have people from Ron Pablo's back here, Christy, Matt back there, Adrian, Kelly, Joey, Mike, just a lot of interest, after hours interest and devotion to this project. So I just wanted to say all that because this is something that is very important and for us, and it's more than just, let's say, designing the kind of ivory tower of, let's say, design, but opening up the process in a way that can be beneficial to a larger group. And you know, we were out there working alongside Victor, Sam, others, and stating stuff and thinking about this project together, including neighbors driving by and looking at us. So I just like, this is a passion thing. We're invested in it, and getting dirty in it is a good thing for us to do together. So, you know, Victor's been talking about this forever, these three shifts, you know, ownership, stewardship, and mentorship. And if the mentorship is the thing that I just talked about, is opening up the process, like every step of this process that could otherwise be closed, procedural, or formulaic, we could just send the thing in and through the city, and it could go through its sort of normal machinations. We have this idea that we're going to open it all up. We're going to see what the plans look like. We're going to see what the entitlements look like. We're going to see what the red tape is like. We're going to work through that stuff together to feel out openly. And like we talk about this as like thinking out loud or working out loud, and that's what we were trying to do here, is open the studio up and open it up to the community to work in with us. The environmental is a big component, which is part of the stewardship, and then, you know, ownership is the path to wealth building and generational wealth building, not just a one-time kind of thing. You know, there's things about the community, as someone as an outsider is recognizing that there's these three really great intangible things, and more than that, and at the risk of being reductive, it's like there's extraordinary creativity, there's extraordinary entrepreneurialism, and it is kind of invented this out of nothing. There's just great, like, there's just this great opportunity, and I think that the layering and the fabric that's here as the basis, the foundation of a really healthy community is in place, and so for us to find and emphasize that is of extraordinary importance. So as Elias mentioned, the missing middle is something that has been published recently about this middle scale between the small scale single family resident and the large multifamily thing that you can, you know, build portfolios with. There's a missing middle. The missing middle was not invented. You recognize all these types, these building types, duplexes, triplexes. quads, bungalows, they're around the city. But a number of kind of planning devices have prevented those from actually getting built in an easy kind of way. And it's a middle scale that's important to build the diversity that we think is this kind of community can have and make it thriving, make it diverse, and make it transition into some of the densities that will come with the light rail. This obviously has been a collaborative effort. Sam and Selena Martinez has helped us with, there he is, I was thinking about there. They helped us with thinking about what's the material representation of site and building. And so we've been working kind of a cross collaborative with Sagrado and others to kind of start thinking about the materiality and what is of this place. And so what you have seen, we have a lot of things out today which we're excited to share with all of you. Some of them are virtual even, which Jim and others in our team and this team will help you kind of navigate when you go outside. And I think we talked about this earlier, we marked the kind of building locations, but as you walked in the door, I think you saw a model there that kind of gives a site model, which with a site plan like this, and then we have another at the scale of kind of the larger city scale, so you get a sense of orientation and how this sits in there. So you're welcome to look at any of these things and ask questions of any of us, but we're happy to help. For orientation, we're looking at a site plan where north is up, and this is sort of the building next door. This is the building we are in the front door. And so we're starting to think about what the relationship of this site is as a network of things, not just building, but what it is a series of outdoor spaces or outdoor rooms or living outdoors as an extension of the living community. So this begins to kind of populate in almost like a time-lapse thing as you start to understand. I feel that there are these modes of transitions through the site and porosity, and then gathering moments like outdoor spaces. Sam and the Sagrado have already begun to identify things that are natural, open outdoor spaces that connect to the community and can be pleasant display and exhibit space, and how you start to think of that as with the existing activities that go on, and then do slight modifications to existing buildings to create this network of outdoor spaces and kind of community investment. This way you're not building this big, massive development, and you have these kind of microclimate, micro-communities that you can build in here and build around each of these independently owned, and then spaces that can be rented and build community through it. So here you see sort of an image of that model. If you're interested, is back behind you. If you want to take some more time with it, we photographed it in an outdoor condition so you can kind of get a sense of what we were thinking about. Some of the stewardship is trying to maintain as much of the kind of mature trees that are out there and use them. Part of the shade, shade corridors is trying to activate the ground plan by providing as much shade that's building architectural shade as much as vegetation and tree shade to create a very habitable kind of ground plan. Now, Krista,
Yeah.
they're not
So
ready.
we're in uniform. Well,
Cheers.
I also very sweaty and stinky from working outside today, but it's great to see so many familiar faces that have supported our TOD grant planning effort, and it's great to be here to talk about an actual project that is implementing that vision in a very specific way. Just to back up for a second, one of the things, and Sam said this earlier this week, it's if the community is going to get more populated and tighter, we might as well have something of great quality and something that's intimate and something that builds community and something that allows us to kind of breathe and have space that activates our environment. And that's really what this project is trying to do, is to work on this whole corner as a plan that moves through buildings and across the site and creates something that is generous and of a high level of quality. So that middle ground that we've been talking about is a smaller scale. So what we're looking at here is a floor plan starting on the far right is the first floor plan that shows that there could be a carport or an opportunity to have an office as part of the living environment at grade. The second floor was the next one over that shows that there could be a single unit that houses multiple bedrooms, even a 3-bedroom unit. With the upper floor that showed 2 studios. The idea of this fourplex that Victor's talking about is the flexibility for this community to live in a multi-generational way, Perhaps there's an owner of this fourplex that lives in whatever floor they choose. And they are able to rent the other units as part of a wealth building, income building, and in creating that generational opportunity for transferring wealth, as well as living in a multi-generational way. The idea of these kind of various scales also creates affordability kind of models. So this is the idea about the flexible ground plane, that the idea that the first floor shows 4 different versions, let's say, of how the first floor might be occupied. There could be a shop associated with a living space. There could be a carport associated with a living space. There could be an office or a workshop or an artist workshop that contributes to the mercado that exists here already. So how can this design and this kind of mixed use support the activities that happen here already and expand the opportunity for living, having retail, as well as perhaps food and beverage. So this is a section of one of the fourplexes that you see in the model. This is the ground, and it shows that it's a 3-story development. So each building is 3 stories. So a total mass of about 35 feet. This, if we kind of exploded that into each floor, it shows you what each floor plate is like as it stacks up. One of the things you'll notice in the model is that the shape of this building is not necessarily square, but it has an opportunity to create unique forms on the site that allows for space in between the buildings to be interesting, allow for trees to grow, and allow for a varied experience. So one of the things that we've been doing is, and I think Elias mentioned this too, is that there's a lot of technical aspects to building a project like this, and particularly challenging on a small site like this is, where a lot of times the city codes ask us to start with parking as a priority in developing the site, which that also allows us to think about how the site might be planned. But what we've been doing here is responding to the WU, or the Walkable Urban Code, section 13.13 specifically, which allows for us to think more creatively about our environment, to mix buildings with landscape, and to reduce the parking demands on sites. This is really important for us to develop a high-quality, walkable environment that connects to our light rail that's coming down Central. We also are working with the TOD, which is a 300-page book that we all collectively participated in making about the community's vision for the future to reduce displacement in this community, a primary aspect of the TOD. So we're looking at these technical requirements, sitting next to Elias, that big board there, if you get a light video. That board there shows the technical requirements of how we would respond if we were responding to technical conventional zoning today, or how we might apply the Walkable Urban Code or the TOD vision, and how that changes the parking requirements, the opportunity for the site integration with buildings. So this is a kind of aerial view that shows, we're looking south, obviously towards South Mountain there, along Central Avenue. You see the light rail kind of posted in. It's coming. It'll be here soon. Here's the corner of St. Catherine's. And this white box here shows what the conventional zoning would allow if Victor wanted to just work under the conventional zoning requirements. You could have a 2-story building. It has the setbacks, which would be required. Also on the vacant lot here that's next to the neighborhood, what might be permissible to build. But what happens with the TOD plan in a transit-oriented development idea is that you create greater density. The purple zone is what the TOD and Walkable Urban Code would allow Victor to do if he would like to adopt that. But what Victor's proposing, and what we're collectively proposing, is that it's somewhere in the middle. It's not the maximum size that we can build, it's not the smallest conventional size we can build, but it's building density, but it's also building quality. It's building a kind of integration of the landscape with the building. And so this is the kind of proposal, not that maximum scale, but something in the middle that's being proposed. This just shows that as we go through this exercise, this kind of technical exercise of thinking about the dimensions and the number of parking spaces and the amount of square footage on the site, we get to a kind of checklist. And this project really is a demonstration of checking all those boxes around sustainability, around building density but not too much, something that's appropriate to the city in response to what the community has conveyed as a vision for affordability, about multi-generational living, about the scale that makes sense as we age or as we come into the world. We can have a smaller space. We can also have a family space, and how those things kind of work together. This is something we've been working on for quite a while, and we've had some lessons learned, though. And we're grateful to have Lorenzo here today, who is a developer who has dealt with many of these challenges on small sites. So Lorenzo, go ahead and share.
Good afternoon. Thank you everyone for allowing me to be here today, share some lessons learned. I've been in the industry developing projects on my own for about 16 years and been in the industry about 28 years. What I find valuable about this is I've watched the city evolve tremendously, especially since light rail in the last decade. I started a company in 2008, and it's crazy how transformative not only the city has become, but also the needs of the community. We're so different now. And so when I was asked to come and help mentor aspiring young developers, I felt like there was a lot of lessons to share. We have an interest in missing middle housing. I think it's a wonderful solution for a city like Phoenix that is predominantly single-family homes. And right now we have the two extremes that we talked about, the big and the small. Those smaller projects fit so nicely in single-family neighborhoods. If you look at the old neighborhoods, and they fill a very valid need. We took on a project in central Phoenix near 14th Street in Highland, where we had a single-family home on a 12,000 square foot lot. And really, I wanted to understand what it would take to get that done, because I've been hearing from other developers how complicated it was. So mind you, 28 years in the industry, 15 years, I've done some really complicated projects. Just came off a 2-acre site on light rail at 4th Avenue in Camelback. We just did a boutique hotel where we converted two 1950s office buildings. And that was a beat down. That was very difficult. It was difficult, but rightly so. Big project, a lot of money. After that project, I came to do a 4-unit for a break. Wasn't much of a break. Wasn't much of a break at all. Very taxing, very complicated. And a lot of it is because the system just isn't set up to facilitate this. When I hear all these things about housing, you've got to find ways to move the needle faster, because we're failing, right? If we are going to rely on just affordable housing developers to do 40, 60-unit projects at a time that take years to assemble and complicated layering of financing, it's just not going to happen. And if we look to lessons of the past, we looked at what did we do after World War II, right? We empowered the small developer, and we were open to diversity in housing. We need that more, we need it in a big way, and we need it at all levels. Especially with the way household formations are today, with 1- and 2-person households being one of the largest growing. How do we create ownership opportunities that are attainable? Because right now, it's not attainable. And part of that is driven because we don't have supply. It's just pure economics. So how do we empower, how do we facilitate small developers to get involved? We need all levels, we need all sizes, we need everyone involved to address this. And the only way it's going to happen is if we as a community speak up and demand it. And from the city, and I even see it, and I'm going to make an argument here for some things, because they asked me, how would you, I don't want to just be the whiny developer, right, who was tough and all that, but we've all got to come together. Citizen, community, city, developer, everyone. So what I'm going to show you just really quickly is a project at 14th Street in Highland. We had a single-family house on a 12,000 square foot lot. And we decided to redevelop this as a missing middle project because it had R4 zoning, so it already had multifamily underlying zoning, which is a big step ahead. If you're single family, it's a whole other thing because you got to rezone it. We own a trailer park across the street. We see mobile homes, 2.4 acres, and we're trying to reimagine what that could be in today's world, because it's a trailer park from the early 40s, and a lot of the product had already deteriorated. And so we decided let's play with this at 4 units before we go to 2.4 acres of something. So this neighborhood, we've got perfect neighborhood to start, right? We've got condos, we got single-family houses, I got subsidized disabled housing, I got senior housing, I got a mobile home park, big apartments, I got it all. Have you been on that street? It's got gas stations, commercial, auto dealerships, light industrial, it's got it all. So I thought this should be a slam dunk. No. So the idea was, let's get rid of one house and a garage. The house was structurally failing. If you know our work, we like to not demolish stuff. We like to work with it and repurpose it. But in this case, we thought, let's go see what it'd be like to build something interesting. So the most efficient thing, cost-efficient thing you can build is a box. So we thought, right? So we decided we're going to just do 4 little simple boxes. We're going to do 4 2-bedroom, 2-bath cottages. But we're going to design in flexibility, understanding how households are changing. We have a lot, because of affordability, we have a lot of unrelated adults pulling resources together to co-house, right? We have all kinds of needs. So in this case, we did a 2-bedroom, 2-bath with a lock-off master suite, so that 2 unrelated adults could pull up and they could each have independent control, kind of like a hotel room. They could each have control. And we did them around these courtyards. We had 2-bedroom, 2-bath, 2-bedroom, 2-bath, but it allowed communal space, and very simple, right? We're just opening it up. But to get something like this done is very complicated. Looks simple, right? Let's take a house down, let's put 4 little casitas or little cottages out there, and they're simple boxes. Let's get it done. Now, I will qualify that it took longer because what happened in 2020, right? The pandemic. Part of it also was, this takes time because you have to clear the pace. You have to navigate web and layer of complication. Not to mention, I mean, you do community outreach. This is a community that was really excited about this idea. They'd like to see more, so very supportive from a community standpoint. But the zoning just isn't set up for detached cottages. Also, we're just not, the city staff, to their defense, they're just not used to doing these projects. So there was a lot of confusion, a lot of research, a lot of people who did do these projects are long gone, they're retired. So we had to go through all kinds of, we had to go get permission with variances, right-of-way, inventory. This is all the technical stuff that the city's put you through. Then to go through the plan review and permitting. And then once you get it, then you got to build it. We're not even talking about how complicated it's been to build in the last few years because of cost escalation, lack of labor, and all that other stuff. But I've shared it with the team. They asked me to present it to them, and then they asked me to share it with you all. Was really to give them perspective, especially the young aspiring developers, that you got to be in. This is a labor of love, and it's incredible passion and commitment because it takes time. But I think what's exciting about South Central Phoenix with the light rail extension is the willingness of the city to be at the table is huge. It's like, hey, the city's already learned how to do this. When there's a will, there's a way. I've worked in cities like Tempe and Mesa, and when there's a will, there's a way. So I love that the city's here. And so the recommendation for me was like, hey, you know, the adaptive reuse program is now one of the most progressive programs in the country. Developers, cities study Phoenix, of all places, adaptive reuse, redevelopment from all over the country. But it started because somebody said, let's try it. And they came in with an open mind, they were in collaboration, and they started with a small pilot project. They learned from it, they iterated, they went to another level. They kept doing it. Now it's citywide. It's phenomenal. It's a great economic development tool. So my thought was, how can we do this? How can we follow that same sort of blueprint for missing middle housing? I will go and add, missing middle is not just housing, it's also commercial. And I'm asked often to speak about the preciousness of small commercial structures like this. It is almost impossible to develop this size and scale of commercial building today at an attainable price. And why is that important? Why does that matter? Because one, we lose our heritage every time we lose one of these and we turn down. But more importantly, we lose accessible commercial space for great small businesses that provide the services and goods that we need, the culture, the creativity. So these buildings, these commercial buildings are equally important. So what I love about this project is it attacks both situations. South Phoenix, the urban context, the fabric along Central Avenue has a ton of this relationship of small commercial, houses of faith, multifamily, single family. It's what do you do with the missing teeth in between it? We have choices. It could be blasé parking lots, or it could be beautiful environments that add to the fabric of this and the energy and look of this community. So, really quick, I'm not going to belabor it too much, but variances, technical appeals, requirements by cities, process, all of it takes time, a lot of meetings and money. I told you I've been doing this 28 years, done a lot of projects with the City of Phoenix. Very blessed and grateful that I have access to some of the top in development services because we've tackled some of the most intense projects. But how do we get the small scale developers, those aspiring, how do we, like, it will never get done if they have to do that. So how can we learn from the stuff we've done, work with the city to streamline the process? And that's what I'm hoping for, is that we can get ahead of it with overlays and text amendments and clean it up to facilitate this. Just to give you some dollar perspective, this isn't all of it, but some of the confusion, the unpredictability, the layer of code, and I know the spirit of it is goodwill. We don't want to overwhelm our infrastructure. We want safe environments, but we're not thinking of common sense in a lot of ways. It's a one-size-fits-all, and it's very difficult. But just in permits alone for my little 4-unit, it was like $19,000. So if you divide that by 4, that has to be passed to my end user. Our original goal was to make these attainable by the end of it. By the time we got mail around the city, the delay in the process, it wasn't totally their fault. Most of it was just we missed our cycle and we got into the cost escalation of run-up. So it's kind of a vicious cycle, you know, and I honestly believe that the city doesn't want to be in that spot either, and it can't be, to be honest with you. They're so under-resourced right now. There's just not, the system is so labor-intensive, and these conversations, it just takes everyone's time. It's a drain on resources. Other things, this was a very unexpected requirement for a project, but added about $60,000. So that's very understated. We had put in underground storm retention on a little 4-unit project that really wasn't adding much more roof area and in open area. It's all the technicalities that the book tells us. So who has to absorb that? We do, but ultimately who absorbs that? The community, and cost and lack of attainment. So this is what it looks like today, and it's just simple 4-unit, 2 bedrooms, 2 bath. We're operating it as a furnished rental to serve traveling doctors and nurses. There's a demand for flexible temporary housing, and really it's eye-opening to me that you know, that people are in such demand. It's so scarce to find just different types of housing, right? We're thinking in terms of traditional 3-bedroom, 2-bedroom, 1-bedroom, but people really look at stuff like shelter. And I think what we're learning from this process is like people will live in a small basic space if it's beautiful, if it's dignified, and if it's available, if there's inventory. So suggestions, I'm not going to read this to you, but I will just point out a few things. And the takeaways are, you know, again, issues we encounter with the city process is that it's a framework that needs to be reviewed. It's a very generic approach to project review and responses. There's really not much attention given to difference in scale or context. And no 2 neighborhoods, I don't care what street you're on, no 2 neighborhoods is the same. And the system isn't set up for gray area and for a more flexible framework. And I think staff would benefit to be a little more empowered to have those conversations and make those adjustments within framework. I think we can learn from each other because it's a vicious cycle. There's a lot of the same hurdles. In 20 years of doing it, the same things come up and come up and like, why? But I think we're at a pain point right now with our housing situation, affordability, that I think everyone can come to the table and offer something up. Again, broad policies, too rigid, disproportionately impactful. That one size fits across all projects is extremely painful for small projects. Because what it costs me to repave a street for doing a water tap is the same cost as somebody who's doing a 700-unit project, 300-unit project. Maybe they have more taps than I do, but incrementally, but they can amortize it across 300 units. Or I got to amortize it across 4 units. It's just a function of math. I think there's creative ways that we can tie fees and creative ways to establish funds to balance that a little better. Prescriptive policies, a lot of prescriptive policies in the zoning that really, I think, lead to uncreative solutions. And who ultimately pays for that? We do, because the neighborhoods aren't interesting. They're not beautiful. We start to see the same thing over and over. You are driving about the same looking apartment building, it's because the system is set up to facilitate that, not to facilitate innovation, creativity. And we want a beautiful city, right? We want interesting stuff. And I think we've got to find the balance again. And then the lack of predictability, the uncertainty, all that drives costs. All that drives uncertainty in developers and lenders, especially lenders don't like uncertainty. So things won't get advanced. We will just sit in blight. There's policies, life safety, don't get me going on the fire department, on a small scale commercial. But like things that, I think the red tar ordinance, totally understand how tragic that was, and the spirit of it is wonderful to save lives. Like, that was built, that was created for a big, huge shopping center, not a 600 square foot record store. So, you know, why am I being asked to bring a fire line across 6 lanes of Camelback, put in a fire line, I have to go through crazy brain damage, meetings, and try to beg for alternative creative solutions. It shouldn't be that way. Let's use common sense. Like, it's about life safety, so what other things can we do that are more appropriate for a small scale building? You know, that's only 40 feet long and 50 feet wide, okay? So with that, you know, I just said the takeaway from this is this complication, why it's important in communities. If you want the city with the resources and services, if you want the beautiful city that you want, if you want the opportunity to be a part of this city building, you need to speak up. And we got to ask our policymakers and our city and bring in developers that are doing it the right way and all sit together because it affects the feasibility of stuff getting done, affordability, creativity, and more importantly, the ability to timely deliver things we need. And the way the city's growing right now, we're backing up. We're getting log jammed, and it's going to become a big problem if we don't figure it out. And why is that important? Because it affects all of us. It affects the city folks. I mean, their workload right now, they're drowning. They're drowning. Flat out. You go there, and little remodels taking 6 to 8 months to get out of the city. It's ridiculous. It's because the system is so intense. So we have to like encourage this kind of stuff. So we got a great opportunity in South Phoenix to do that with a pilot project, something small. We're not asking for the world. Let's show what can be done, and let's just have the courage to do it, and you know, the open mind and the support. And anyways, I hope that helps. That's my soapbox.
Thank you, Lorenza, and everyone for your time and patience. It is great to have so many city staff here today, and I think all the ones that are here also represent the creativity and collaboration that we see coming from the city, and so we're thankful to have everybody here and to think about what Victor said early on. The ask is about open-mindedness, being strategic, streamlining some of the processes, and working kind of collaboratively together so that we don't end up with a city of sameness, but that we can create the distinction that this community is asking for with each of its neighbors. And I know Joelle's been talking about character areas and defining where those character areas are, small and big. And I think this site right here is its own kind of character area that's needed to the adjacent neighborhood. So we just want to open up for discussion, questions from anybody, and then we'll take a quick tour outside before the sun sets. So does anyone have any, or things that we've left out?
It's amazing. I'm in these meetings and I know what's going on, but to actually start seeing it like this is wow. I'm like super proud of everyone on my
Yes.
Closing remark that I always want to do with this is the vision of the South Central Community Community Plan is to reject displacement and to make it a Hesperus corridor for existing residents and future ones. But we have current residents that are the owners that are willing to try to develop something, and they try and they find out I might as well just sell it instead because I'm not going to get this developed. You start losing that locally developed local context, and through no fault of their own, it's a numbers thing. And unless those numbers line up, we're not going to be able to do the number one tool that we can, which is do these 3 zones, do walk over urban code for the smaller scale developments to actually happen. So it's one of those things that we really do look forward to collaborating on to see if we can identify any of those purple obstacles and help to project the corridor to the prosperous vision that we know it's going to be a world-class destination.
Yeah, what stage is the St. Catherine Square project in? And like, you showed, it was really impactful showing the different versions of what the conventional design looks like versus other phases. Have those been approved? I'm just curious as to where next.
So our process, we were talking about this meeting today as a mock pre-application meeting, because we're really not in the queue at the city to create the pre-application process, which is the first thing that we would normally do as the project is developing with design, is to say, here's a site plan, here's the density, here's the parking, and get all of the city departments engaged. And so what we're doing tonight is to simulate that experience in a large group setting with the community members, all of you that are here, because usually that's a very small group of, head planners, head streets department, each department is represented, and we have a technical conversation. And what we're trying to do tonight is to kind of expose those technical issues a little bit and engage the broader community, because we have parking requirements as an example. Even though we can reduce the parking by the walkable urban code and the TOD plan, we still need to think about things like how does street parking weigh into the factor of parking on a site? How does district parking allow us to reduce the parking requirements on these sites so that we can get more people or more businesses on the site, and we can walk in between those things instead of creating a kind of dominant world around the car, especially with our light rail that's coming. So we're in the stage of provoking the conversation, imagining the possibility, and getting the project going. So I don't know what else you want to say.
Yeah, no, I'll just say, it is still conceptual, and this is why we're trying to go through this process. We did send the site plan over to the city of Phoenix, and they gave us a lot of markups and red lines and things that we need to see that we can start working on, like abandoning the alleyway to try to create this more porous action between 4 separate parcels that are, like this one. This was a shotgun building at one point. This side where those pillars, that was built in 1920. This side over here was built in 1980. You don't see projects like this anymore. You don't see development like this. So everything that we're exploring to do right now, it's a risk, right? So I'm trying to learn as much as I can before taking the full risk, because I've taken land down. I was trying to develop 76 units at Central and Elwood back in 2004, 2005. I had all my financing lined up. I had the City of Phoenix Industrial Development Authority ready to give me a loan. I had Meridian Bank ready to finance me. And my attorney looked at me and said, Victor, all these documents are great. They're exactly what you said, but I know you don't pay me to tell you this. He said, but don't let your first deal be your last deal. He said, right now, we're getting ready to head into 2007. He said, I'm already unwinding deals for developers that I've worked with for the past 20 years. And he says, just think about it. And I did. I already kind of knew the shift because I'm in real estate, owning RE/MAX. I got to kind of already get a pulse of where things were going. And I had to give people a call. I had to give the president of the IDA a call and give our policymakers a call, say, I can't do it. I can't sign the loan. And I'm glad I didn't, because what happened, at the end of 07 with the subprime market crashing, and then 08, the Great Recession, it would have sunk me. Thankfully, I took the 4 acres down on the seller carryback. I got to do a deed in lieu of foreclosure and really get out of that unharmed, instead of taking, $2 or $3 million of debt that I would have had to carry that I would ultimately have lost. So, going through that, I've been really tentative. I've had brothers like my boy Javier over here, like, come on, Vic, let's start a development company. It's not the right time. It's not the right time, brother Javier. But, I feel like it's the perfect time, because where the market's shifting, if we can get this right and get the support right, I think the broader concept is to create developers, be very intentional about creating developers from our community.
That's right.
People that are from here, developing their ideas out, living it out in a way that is different than anywhere else in the country. We're Phoenix, we're South Phoenix, and we're very proud of that. So yeah, we've been at this longer than 2 years. It's been just this project a couple years, but decades of work. And all the work that we have to do on the other side of things, like the light rail, all the current non-project activities. I mean, we had to work on so much just to get it to this point where we could develop something that's going to be livable, walkable, desirable. We put bioswales in front of my property from here all the way to Southern. That was difficult work. We got the city of Phoenix, thanks to Marcus and our councilwoman Gallego, and who's now our mayor. Just those folks that stepped up and said, you know what? we're gonna create bioswales because you really want them. We understand the value of them long term. So we removed some of our driveways for the future so that we can have these bioswales, have more shade, more walkability, be a real pedestrian-oriented community where people could walk. So, you know, it's hard to say where we're exactly at in this process because it's been literally 20 years of work that has led us to this point. Marcus, go ahead.
Because you mentioned that on the bioswales. One thing I do want to say is I think people need to understand that full picture, even what's happening here right now, is first, Victor will not take no for an answer. Secondly, Victor, not only for yourself, but also, you know, you represented the church and others, they're willing to come to some skin in the game. And it's very hard for the city of Phoenix for us to say no when we see that the community is willing to put that skin in the game. When it's all put on the city of Phoenix, when it's all put on the municipality, it's a lot easier to stick to the rules. But when people are willing to say, you know what, we're willing to give up some space, we're willing to make some concessions because this is how much it means to us, it makes it a lot easier for our electeds and for our staff to be able to say, okay, you know what, they're giving, we have to give. We have to find a way that we can think outside the box. And I'm not saying it always has to be that way, but I think that when you're chartering new territory, you're going into areas that we aren't typically in, you're asking people to take on responsibilities that they normally don't take on. Sometimes people don't have contracts, like for bioswales, there's a lot of things that have to happen behind the scenes. But I think that that willingness for the community to say, you know, we're not just asking, we're here, we're putting our skin in the game as well. It makes such a momentous change in the way that people approach things and view things. And so that's one thing I will say, you know, I'm from South Phoenix, I love it. You know, we've been running together for a long time. It's good to see the community is really starting to demand things, but also they're willing to make those sacrifices, you know. So I just put that out there to say, as this momentum starts to grow, because I know it will. This is just the first of many that are coming. Just keep those kind of carrots in mind that when you come to your elected officials, when you come to your department heads, make sure that you can show, like, hey, you know, we've looked at this every way, we've sliced this every way we can to fit within the box that you have. But this is where we need your help. You know, so.
Thank you.
Victor, I wanted to comment on that too because we have Robin Romano here, who's the president of Marisol, and we had a really great lunch with Robin a while back. And I know we don't even have a structure really yet or anything to actually have a mortgage on, but Robin flat out was so inspired by this. She said, I would help folks get mortgages to buy these products. So, yeah, and part of that was because the system right now with FHA and some of those things, you know, are not allowing, you know, some of that ownership opportunity, and there's too much of a burden right now the way the system is. So what you have here is a lot of people that are saying, you know, the system isn't working for us, for average, everyday people to own and actually create wealth and to become developers. And so I just wanted to point that out, that Robin was just at a lunch having this conversation with us. I don't want to put you on the spot, I'm saying to you, Robin, but I just want to, you know, highlight that you know that as a, you know, a president of a very successful credit union serving the community. I stand by what I said.
I'll tell you the reason behind that, you know, when we were having the lunch, I was like, okay, we have to bring a market-based approach. So I was trying to go FHA, but I do know the challenges of FHA because the PMI, you know, the mortgage insurance that's on there is excessive. You know, and because the market crashed, it was created, you know, I understand why, but Robin said, you know what, you get them built, we will finance them. And, you know, they have a product, instead of creating mortgage insurance, they have a savings plan. Instead of putting PMI to secure the lender, they're securing the family and saying, we're going to invest, create a savings account that you can have there when you need to build, you know, an improvement, or, you know, your AC goes out, or your water, you know, because homeownership's expensive, right? And being able to have banks like that, local banks, come together with local developers, it starts to change things. So, you know, what your commitment is, Robin, is huge, and that is extra motivation for me to get these built for people. And, you know, talking to some of the planners and some of the folks, you know, out here in the parking lot, I want to live here. You know, they're like, I want to live here. You know, it's great to already hear like that they're already picking out what space they want to move into. So I got a contract waiting for you guys. Any other questions or any discussion? Because this is now the time. I mean, it's really, we want to have a conversation, and especially the city folks, some of the developers that are here in the room. Anything you want to add to enrich the conversation? Yes, Lisa, please.
So on the limited income households, the LIHTC households that you're building, are some for senior or is it just a certain AMI? And I asked that because Beth was always saying to me, Lisa, let's get heat. I was like, you don't get a gas. You know, I worry about the seniors, and that's the largest demographic of homeless becoming homeless. And it's scary to think that they're on Social Security, they may not own their home, you know. So what about seniors in this? Is there a possibility? And they're so tied to the St. Catherine, they would love the idea of living in the St. Catherine.
No, we're not doing a 9% or 4% tax credit, so it's not a LIHTC project.
Oh, it's not, okay.
No, these will be ownership. So LIHTC are rental projects.
Yes, gotcha. I
But
thought
yes,
they were LIHTC.
the challenge of being a realtor, and we've got a few of them in our room, you know, we've been trying for years to get people with HUD vouchers into
Sure.
homes. And people don't like HUD vouchers, especially in environments like the one that we're in, where they can take the best application with the top credit, you know, first and last month's rent, you know, 2.5 times the income that they need to support the mortgage. This is not going to work for the majority of people in our neighborhood. 2/3 of our community lives on less than $20,000 a year. 67% of their income goes to just housing and transportation. So with the light rail coming here, that's going to take some transportation burden off. We're hoping that these type of innovations that will come in will take some of the housing burden off, so that we will accept those tenants. We're asking the city for some project-based vouchers so that we can lease these up. Because with an FHA loan, traditionally you can utilize 70% of those rents to qualify for a mortgage.
Right.
So that means we can build a fourplex at maybe $500,000 or $600,000 of high quality. That's going to serve, you know, you could be proud of, like the chateaus on Central, not quite that level, but you know, something that's beautiful and connects with the church, connects with the school, connects with everything that's here. These are the people that we want to serve.
No, ownership is
So-
super important, so I'm glad, I just wasn't clear. on
But yeah,
that.
seniors that are on HUD,
Yes.
Section 8
Senior- next
vouchers,
development, seniors.
single moms, you know, single dads that are out here in our community that have Section 8 vouchers could move into these
Yeah, okay.
units.
Lisa, I think that, yes, the scale of that fourplex is
Yes.
that there is something that's like a 900, you know, and 13 square foot unit, but there's also 2 small 250 square foot units. So
Perfect.
like there's an opportunity to
I like
have
that.
that kind of multi-generational.
Thank
living.
you, I love that idea, thank you.
Josh?
You know, this might be for rental, so you could take this, if you could pick one development standard, just waiver one, you could change it. What would it be? Would it be parking, would it be civil, I mean, I'm all ears, what would it be, the number one thing you should go change to make stuff like this happen?
Man, yeah, I would, my number one would be parking, and being more creative with shared parking models, and my God, we could land Cessnas on the right-of-ways we have here in Phoenix, like, let's just stripe streets, so we have parallel spots, so there's no fighting right park, whatever, like, it's such a simple move. Give some credit to the street, people park there anyways, it's a public thing we all pay into. So I would start with parking, would be my number one, and then a close second would be the site grading and drainage ordinances for small infill, probably, and small commercial.
All right,
Yeah.
thanks.
You bet.
Josh, you gonna work on that?
You know, I think it's conversations like this, that, as Marcus said, you know, you get some momentum, right? Changing the code in a city this big is hard, right?
Yeah.
When we change- as Lorenzo said, anytime you touch the ordinance, right? Most of the ordinance applies citywide.
Yeah.
And so a change we make affects not only South Central, but Desert Ridge. And folks in Desert Ridge or Arcadia or Ahwatukee feel a lot differently about, as they should, right? We're at 520 square miles. I think what the plan does is provide us an opportunity. One of the things that through Joel and Leah's leadership, we were able to adopt and modify the loop code so that there's a specific boundary now in the zoning ordinance just for this area. So what does that do? It provides us an opportunity, if we maybe to look at some code changes that have them only apply certain areas. And you need that area defined in the code. That plan and the subsequent updates to the zoning ordinance allows us to do that. I'm certainly not in a position to say I can snap my fingers and get that done tomorrow. But it's conversations like this that allow momentum to be built, like Marcus said, and allow us to potentially work with our great leaders and councilors with Date 7 to see what we can do. So really appreciate the opportunity. We've really enjoyed all being said.
So those who don't know what blue code is, can you tell people what that is?
Sure. So as the Walkable Urban Code is chapter 13. Krista went through a section of that. Part of what we do when we do community planning process, right? We come up with a vision, we come up with policies. So how do we actually make that happen? The zoning ordinance, the rule book that says where the house should go, how much of that house can take up on that land, how high it can go, it is the zoning ordinance. And what we did in response to the growing need for a new kind of development, transit-oriented development, development that is meant to cater to transit riders, is we developed a new section of the zoning ordinance, the chapter 13, the Walkable Urban Code. But it, just like the rest of our zoning ordinance, is designed for the entire corridor, right? South Central, 19th Avenue, North Central. And so what conversations like this do is to say, maybe there's some actual space within the Walkable Urban Code itself, within chapter 13, that needs to be a little bit different for certain parts of the corridor, because it's grown. Maybe we're very fortunate to have supported the community to expand light rail, but as that system expands, maybe the code probably needs to be diverse and expanding.
And Josh, how it grows with the baseline area over the
Yeah, absolutely. So Chris had talked about the feedback that we're able to get as part of the REACT. This is Danielle behind it. She's one of our supervisors on the site planning team. And as Lorenzo said, her team is absolutely overwhelmed with work right now. And part of a big chunk of our department in planning and development is only allowed to work on things that we're charging a fee for. We're not general fund. Danielle did all of this on her free time. And so I appreciate that. Grateful for her, Leah's and Joel camping outside of her cube, setting her accountancy notes, and, her making the time. And so I think, it's a testament to, I think, the support you have for the city of Phoenix, how much we want to help. I think Lorenzo's comments are really on point. As Danielle said, this is a really unique area, right? And there's been a lot of planning that's gone into baseline. Was probably one of the last big planning efforts that happened for South Phoenix. And a lot of great things came out of it, but an overlay came in place that really tried to make sure that they're having a rural agrarian lifestyle. And that overlay intersects now with South Central. And as we're starting at Southern Avenue, you have a little bit of a conflict about what we wanted back in 2000, 1998, and what we want today. And so now there's another layer that we have to go back and potentially unwind and make work. To Joel and Lisa's credit, they've already started on that. We've got some great leadership on our planning commission. Commissioner Jaramillo's over there.
Yeah.
We've got Commissioner Fisher. We're excited to start working with the commissioners to see what kind of level of support we can have to go and roll some of those things back. And so, again, grateful for this conversation, grateful for Danielle, Joel, and Leah, and all of our team members here tonight to listen and hopefully begin to start working on some of these things.
And I'll add one thing to that too. One thing that Josh didn't mention is recently we got together, our departments got together and talked about the need for more staff. We know that there's only so much that people can do. And so Councilwoman Ansari and Councilmember Garcia gave us a thumbs up. So when I went through our last budget process, we're going to be adding some positions into the planning development department. We're going to be splitting the cost of those, which should help us to further our TOD process and in the implementation of these plans as they develop. So
Great point.
Young lady in the middle here. Go
I
ahead,
have a
Lauren.
question more so on like the community side of it. Because this looks beautiful, but me picturing it looks like taking new fabric and sewing it to old fabric, right? if you're just developing this area, what about the developer helping to expand and helping other businesses or whatever on this side of, Central? There's a Dr. Coop in that raggedy yellow building, you all know. He should be here. He's been in that building for probably 20 years. He lives on the mountain. So how does it look making this area beautiful, and then you go a few paces north or south, and you look like you're still in the old South Phoenix? Like, how do we take this vision and the developer get some extra funds and expand it? Pull in Dr. Coop, find out what he needs to do to, make his building look more presentable, or to make it match this a little better. Because I don't see me, I've lived in South Phoenix on Black. I don't see me coming here, putting my money back here, when everything else looks dilapidated and torn down. It's as if we don't care. So I think it has to be more for not just this, but add a couple more buildings and get their input and try to get them some funding to make this start to look like it's a uniform and it's for everyone.
Yeah, no, it's a great question. I'd like to address that. It's about relationship, I believe. We've gotten to where we're at today because of relationship. And Dr. Coop is not only, my chiropractor, but he, sits at Mass with me. We serve, we worship together. So, the thing is with him, and we're always talking about land and development, it is having those conversations to say, hey, if you can do it, maybe I can do it. If you've done it, maybe I can do it. I've had conversations with our neighbor here, Paula Wetzel, right next, Paula's right next door to me, right behind Robin. But I asked her, maybe that unit that's, she's got an older garage. Maybe we could help her develop an auxiliary dwelling unit that she can rent out or have. She's raising, she's helping with her father and caring for him. How can we help her get that ADU approved and make that part of the development? So we are looking at, connecting to the relationships we have. I've talked with the pastor, our parish priest, and saying how might we relieve some of the traditional parking that's been on St. Catherine's where people drop off their kids and pick them up. He's saying, I'm willing to dedicate a roundabout at the end, they'll go through from St. Catherine's to Alta Vista so that there's a real pickup and drop off place that's more safe and therefore for families. So again, it's just having all this relationship. I was born and raised here, and so knowing everybody, I think that's how you do it. We wish more people took pride in their building, but I don't think it's only the small folks. It's the CVS who never keeps their place clean. It's the McDonald's who doesn't keep their trash bins, thrown. The grocery stores that don't take care of their lots either. So it's corporations that have the ability to really step up the banks. You walk to some of the parking lots, if you live here, you see them. But I believe that we have a lot of money and a lot of investment in people that are here in the community that are willing to invest and reinvest in this neighborhood. So I just will add that to it for now. And I think there's other conversations that can be had, but for the most part, I think that's what I'm.
Can I just say that our credit union, Marcel Federal Credit Union, went to, we're not in this particular neighborhood, we're off of Grand 15th Avenue and Roosevelt, which we purposely went to this neighborhood because, it needed love. And we built a nice building there, and yes, I can understand all the pains of the city of Phoenix, but I had an art overlay district there. But doing that, we built that building 5 years ago, and people saw it, and there have been changes in that neighborhood. If you build it, people will come. Maybe it's not overnight, and maybe it doesn't happen, as quickly as you want, and then of course you have the pandemic, but it does happen, and there have been positive changes in the Grand Avenue in those areas. It's not overnight, but changes are happening. So if you build it, it will come, because people will want to elevate themselves. And I say that because we've experienced that in that particular neighborhood.
Thank you. Star, and then Paula, and then I think someone over here. Oh, Lauren, let's go to Lauren, because she was there for a while. Sorry, Lauren.
Well, first, I just want to express gratitude for having a model like this
seen you all working for the span of 2 years and kind of been on the periphery. I know 2 years goes fast, but a lot of work's gone into it, and I'm just excited to see what comes from it, because we all know how frustrating it can be sometimes when you don't have an example of the reality that things like this can be done. And I think to your point, I think that's such a great question with, how does this affect local businesses and residents here? Those are questions that go through, I think, like everyone who's up there's minds. I don't read minds, but sometimes I feel like I do. So I think that, those questions are there, and something that keeps coming back to me is, just this ask of how can we have support from the city and corporations or any other potential sponsors to help support these renovations for businesses so that they are on the terms of the doctors and any other local business owners who want to make those facade improvements and maybe don't have the support to do that. My question for any and all of you, as we have more examples like this of this kind of missing middle development, my thought is that a lot more young people, maybe not just young people, but a lot of people are going to want to become developers. And as someone who taught for years in this community, I've looked for examples of real things that I could share with my students, and this wasn't something that I had to share. So now that we have this, I'm thinking there will be more young people who want to take this as a profession, maybe even myself, so I'm like, how can I do this? But the reality is we're talking about families on a budget of $20,000 a year. So what are your recommendations for someone in that position as we're trying to support these local developers? What do they do? How do you go from having a budget of 0 to doing something like this?
Yeah, and maybe even address contractors and all the different contractors that are associated, because I think there's so much opportunity in that space.
Yeah, I think, it's workforce development. I mean, everything that we've been working with on this project, as you know, the artists that are building the light rail stations, artwork wouldn't have happened if it wasn't for Sam and us at the South Central Collaborative, and again, the now Mayor, Kate Gallego. Those things wouldn't have happened. And we were able, instead of those contracts going nationally, we were able to secure $3 million to stay right here in our neighborhood, in our community. So $3 million doesn't seem a lot for a $1 billion project, but it's a ton. And it changes people's lives. And now these artists now have a connection to South Central. They're from here. They're now saying, hey, how can I get a space, Victor? Can I get a space back there? Do you have something? I was like, man, there's nothing around. There's nothing I can provide to them. So I think that's part of it, is that workforce development portion of it. And I think you're right with some of the contractors, trying to, we have 5,000 people at our parish right here at St. Catherine's. I know a lot of them, and it's really putting that as a priority, a focus, to bring those trades in to make it, a viable project. And yeah, it may take a little longer, it may be a little sloppy at the beginning, but this is the first project. And if we can solve for X, we could solve for this, we now unleash an entire corridor between the sevens where people can develop their own 10,000 square foot lot that's been sitting vacant for 50 years. A house or a project that's, my friends over here at Central and St. Anne, they're now motivated. They're putting shade awnings and they're doing things that are different. So I think there's no one answer. It's a long game. It's a long effort, but I'm committed to, and I think our other developers are committed to bringing those local connections so that they get that revenue into their pockets and can become part of the ownership model. Even if they're a renter initially, but we can show them to the point to get to the point of home ownership. Because if you can rent these units up, the majority of their mortgage can be covered by the renters. We need somebody that's going to be committed to the area and committed to the people in this community. And if they're willing to, property management, we're going to have like an HOA. The goal is to have a property management company that mentors these homeowners to want to take on these 3 tenants in their house. Because not everybody's equipped to do that. That generates income for that individual, for the property management companies, so there's a lot of different ways to start bringing that money into the community.
And I know organizations like CPLC have places where businesses can be trained. Small businesses can launch and be trained to become whatever they
Can I add something?
Yes.
So I would just answer your question. I think at the heart of it is, and it's one of the reasons I'm excited about getting involved here, is we just got to create exposure. We got to show it's possible, and we got to be educating. And you educate by watching and observing and doing. So these become great case studies. You know, I was blessed because somebody took time to show me this world. But, you know, the only people that were in real estate in my family were in the trades or landscape, you know. So, like, a lot of people don't even think about it. A lot of people in this community never owned anything. So it's got to be really, we got to be patient, take the long view. It's got to be education, exposure, getting them involved in the process, learning it. It's complicated. It doesn't have to be, but it could just be something simple about like teaching someone how to get positioned to get a mortgage, you know, and teach them creative finance strategies to, you know, layer up rent. Like, so you get rewarded for taking your risk, but it comes with work and it comes with responsibility. So, like, it's a serious game, and people need to understand that. And like, lives are at stake here, but man, they could, you know, catch people up so fast, right? You know, these communities haven't had opportunity for ownership or building wealth, but man, that can really catch people up fast if we can empower citizens to do this. And especially in these communities where we have a lot of families pulling resources, multi-generational. I loved your comment, Lisa, about senior housing. How many nuns are living with their families, right? Or aunts and uncles or siblings. So what a great model. If you understand how these cultures and these communities live, it's a great model. It's a great tool to do it, to teach, to build wealth, to establish financial footing and financial literacy, right? Technical literacy, the trades. Not everyone has to go to college. We can teach other trades, other resources. So it's kind of like going back to the basics. I think it's a wonderful opportunity. I would love to see the exposure happening at grade school all the way up. So
Yeah. Javier, and then Elias, and then back over here.
And then to kind of go into the education piece of it, I mean, this is a great transformative project, but at the same time, the underlying thing that's occurring is the mentorship piece of it, which is also going to kind of carry over. You know, you've got folks like Lorenzo, Multi-Studio, who are willing to take the time to educate Victor, myself, Sam, other folks in the group to learn and develop the project. And the great thing about it is all of us have this kind of, what's the word, you know, the development for the community. You know, we're all from South Phoenix, we're all in South Phoenix. So the goal is to make development for South Phoenix. So this type of mentorship program helps folks like me to learn how to develop with a conscience. And then the whole conversation has always been, it can't just stop with me. Now I've got to go and help somebody else, you know, do the same thing. And then they'll have to do the same thing. And then that's kind of how you build that development piece to it. You get enough folks like that in the room that learn and start to participate in that, then that answers the questions of, well, what about the rest of the community? And, you know, what's going to happen with the folks down the street or the pieces that don't look so great or aren't as improved. You know, folks like us can carry that on and kind of spread that into the community.
Before I go there, Paul, I forgot. I had Paul on Star. Go ahead, Paul.
Hi, so I'll just stand up. So I live right next to a lot, empty lot right here. My little bit of history, my parents have owned it since they got married in the 70s. I was born straight into the house. We've been here a very long time. We know all the neighbors for many years. Some that have passed, some that are still here. So I guess my concern is that I don't see any of them here. My concern is that I've spoken to some and they have no idea what's been going on here. And that's the first time they have heard about this project. So that's my concern. I do have smaller concerns, obviously, because we are directly next to the development. And I don't plan on selling the house. We've been there for many, many years. I take care of my dad who's 80 years old. And, you know, we don't plan on moving that house. information. But I guess that's my major concern is just informing our neighbors, you know. I went to this school, I graduated from this school, my son graduated from this school. I plan for my 3-year-old to also graduate from St. Catherine's. And my mom worked here at St. Catherine's. She passed away when I was 12 years old, but she worked here at St. Catherine's. We are a big part of this community. I know a lot of people that I grew up with. So I am concerned just because I do know these big 3 neighborhoods right here, 3 streets right here, you know, I know a lot of people that are still here even from their children or whoever owns the home. And I guess my just big concern is that this corner will become so busy that it's going to take away from our quiet neighborhood, from my kids being able to play in the streets, from busy parking on the streets. So yeah, and I just wish that we would have more community involvement. I know that it seems like there is a lot of community involvement, but just not to the direct neighborhood. So I would love to have a meeting with, you know, and I would gladly, I speak Spanish, so I mean, I would be happy to walk the neighborhoods and tell them where to be here and discuss, you know, what's going to happen on our neighborhood street, you know, because I think it's important for them to know. So that's just my piece. I'm not like dashing you guys down. I just, like I said, these are just valid things that, you know, I think about. I talked to my dad about. I've met with Victor before, you know, just talking to my dad as well, you know, getting his input because, you know, it is his house. Yes, it'll come to me, but it is his house, and he hasn't been here for years and has seen it change, and you know, from houses that were here before, weren't here before, but you know, tore down, people moved. So I guess yeah, that would be just my big thing is I would like, you know, maybe a meeting with the whole neighborhood, with you know, people who are going to be directly impacted by this.
Thank you, Paula. Yeah, I did extend invitations to Manuel and Fabiola and, you know, Principal and a number one, your neighbor next door, Alice, and a number of them that own, you know, they have renters now, tenants. So they were invited, they didn't come. But I'll continue to invite. With this process, we're gonna have to rezone the property, which you have to notify everybody within 500 feet, I believe. So this is a mock pre-app. We will get to that point where we have to further really engage the community because we'll have to go to the public to get support.
Yeah,
So,
just because, I mean, my concern is if you like the height of everything, like you guys are directly next to
Right.
my end, like you guys can see right over, like it's taking away privacy, from us, you know, and, that's a concern for me. And I understand the parking situation, but you know, having strangers park on our street is also a concern. We don't have good lighting. Like, people walk down the street who are transit, who are, you know, just random people walking down the street and like having more people, you know, parking on our street. We don't know who they are. We've got kids too. We've got, you know, so I do have, it's just gonna be a lot more traffic, a lot more people that we have to look out for. And it sounds wonderful when you put it up there, but you know, we live it, and you know, we're gonna be here. You know, some of you guys are not, you know, you guys are the planners, right? So that's why I just really would like to bring more of the community, not just like the ones that are 600 feet from here, but all down the line. I mean, I know there's like tons of people on our street that, you know, will be impacted by it, not just because it's, you know, when you're directly right here, but because you're driving past here, they're walking down your street, they're going to be present people here, and so I just, it's a lot to take in, and I'm sorry I'm like a downer now.
thank you, I appreciate it. Star, go ahead.
It just is concerning, and I see, like, I'm a social worker, I've been doing it for 9 years, I live all over the valley, I see how the development is happening with the Allegro and housing. I get it, like, I totally understand, we need housing. I just, you know, has been a quiet, closed neighborhood that is directly impacted and changes the dynamic.
Can I add to that? Just it's such a common reaction to change on light rail, and you look at the North Central Extension, West Camelback Corridor, Mesa, Tempe, they all have that situation. And they're valid. They're valid points. This process has to go through a public process, and it takes all stakeholders. So the developers, the neighbors, everyone's got to come and get, because the reality is, if you don't work together, it's just going to roll over you, because it's a wave that's coming, whether you like it or not. And it's sad to say it that way, but that's the reality of it. And the neighborhoods that work together manage it beautifully, and everyone, like, nothing ever stays stagnant, it's evolving. And so, like, I would encourage, like, the development team, like, really work closely. That's the best way to do it. We did a project at 12th Street in Glendale. We put a commercial project right in the middle of a residential neighborhood. Could have run for office for 7 years, sat in a lot of living rooms. But you know what? It leads to a better project. And people are afraid to change. And the sad thing is change happens. So, like, everyone's got to work together. And I think if both parties come with open mind and good hearts, they'll find the happy medium to it, because this will lead to something much worse for everyone. But working together into something like listening, like, what do you want? You know, how do I preserve privacy and transitions? And everyone's got to give and take for it to happen. It's just, there's so many examples, and I would encourage you to go to all these neighborhoods. Patchy Corridor, got great community groups together, working together, and they're developing these great little projects. Also, great opportunity. One of the best things to being last in the process is lessons learned. Go listen, go talk to these groups. So not only this neighborhood, but like all around this area. Because these projects do, they impact. Everyone gets impacted. The light rail is going to impact whether you work or not. It's going to come. It's a wave.
We're just going to end with Star because we're losing sunlight, and we have these really cool QR codes where you could shoot the parking lot and you can actually see what those would look like visually, so you could even see from your house, Paula, from what it would look like, and firsthand, like virtually what it would look like. So Star, and then we'll head out to the little tour.
I will say to Paula, I thank you for coming, because it is we all have been working very closely with our community partners. My mother always loved the Ortiz is right here. So I'm always, trying to explain to my mother about like the importance of this and why we're doing the work that we're doing. And, she tells me all the time, I have people calling me to sell my house every day. So please know that my own family was down there, so I'm very committed to making sure that the process is done properly, that you are along the families that move down here. I work for Rosin Valley, downtown Phoenix, and just the mentorship in general, like some of the words you're using, I'm like, oh, I know those words. I know what that means. Not because I'm a developer, but because of the mentorship, because of the community involvement and all the collaboration that has been done here. So I appreciate that. And again, we as community members and partners are very much aware of that, to make sure that it's definitely being taken care of in the community. And to the last point is that we're in the middle of the neighborhood as well. And what I had to do is literally just go start knocking on the doors. Now my neighbors, I wave to them and they say, oh, hey, Star, they know. Inviting them to the Mercado, coming into our building, explaining to them what we do. And now I have all the neighbors watching out for them. It is a community.
Thank you. So we're going to go outside on the tour.
So Jim's gonna
Jim's going to give us some instructions.
Really quickly, hi.